Welcome everyone. This is the account with the report for day 424 of the war in Ukraine. Thank you for joining me. First up, a personal matter. You may or may not have noticed that the report for day 422 was taken down by YouTube. I received a warning for spreading conspiracy theories. However, YouTube quickly granted the appeal and reinstated the video. I want to point this out once again. All my reports are based on facts and reputable sources. I'm not trying to influence anyone and their political or personal opinions. While I'm pro-Ukrainian, I'm trying to keep my reports as objective as possible so everyone can form their own opinion based on facts that can be verified and traced to its original source. And now for the report. Today I have one extra segment regarding the statements made by the Chinese ambassador to France. All other updates are grouped into the usual: situation inside Ukraine, the occupied territories, Russia and Belarus, and the international developments. Before we start the news though, the flashpoints along the front. Bakhmut. Footage shared on social media confirms that after Russia managed to advance on the O0506 road near Khomove, a Ukrainian counterattack pushed Russian forces back by at least 500 meters. Due to Russian reinforcements, heavy fighting continues around Khomove. Inside Bakhmut, Russia is slowly extending its operational reach and pushing Ukrainian defenders out of positions. After Russia reportedly managed to capture the train station and railway tracks, the front moved further west. The railway line is marked here. Kherson. Geolocated footage shows Ukrainian forces landing on the left side of the Dnipro. The Ukrainian military command has asked to be patient regarding information about the landing. This is also mentioned in the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. And now for a quick message. I wanted to congratulate Associated Press photographer Evgeny Maloletka. His iconic photo showing a pregnant woman being carried through the shattered grounds of the maternity hospital in Mariupol after a Russian attack won the prestigious World Press Photo of the Year award. And to start the news segment, the international reactions to a statement made by Chinese ambassador to France, Du Shaye. State Duma deputy from Sevastopol, Dmitry Belik, welcomed the statement and called it a cold shower for the West. The foreign ministers of Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia have condemned the statement, demanded an explanation from China, and called for a different political approach to China. Ukraine's ambassador to France, Vadim Omelchenko, said that either the ambassador has obvious problems understanding geography or his statements go against the official position of Beijing. Josep Borrell, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, called the statement unacceptable. A look at all the minor updates out of Ukraine. According to Yuri Inat, the spokesperson for the Air Force of Ukraine, one Patriot anti-aircraft missile system has already been deployed in Ukraine, while the rest are on their way. The Ministry of Culture and Information Policy of Ukraine has set up a commission to check the use of the Pochaiv Lavra by the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate. The Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, Andriy Melnik, stated that Ukraine is in urgent need of modern fighter jets to support a counteroffensive, but allies are currently unwilling to provide them. In his evening address, President Zelensky said that Ukraine is preparing several important international events that might help provide more weapons to Ukrainian soldiers. He did not specify what he meant. Next up, the latest regarding the situation in the occupied territories. Ahead of an expected Ukrainian counteroffensive, Russian forces have increased their effort to build fortifications and set up minefields in occupied Zaporizhia Oblast. Petro Andrioschenko, advisor to the Mariupol mayor, reported an increase in activity of Russian aviation over the occupied city. Moving on to the news updates from Russia and Belarus. Dmitry Medvedev, Deputy Secretary of the Security Council of Russia, has threatened to end the grain agreement if the G7 bans exports to the Russian Federation. Fines were issued on a Tesla car belonging to Nikolai Chols, son of Dmitry Peskov, the Russian president's press secretary, at a time when he was allegedly fighting in Ukraine. In an interview, Nikolai Chols said that his father had helped him join the Wagner PMC at the beginning of the full-scale war in Ukraine. Several media outlets doubted that Peskov's son went to war due to the fact that fines continued to be issued on his Tesla in Moscow. Russian journalists were not issued visas by the US to cover the event. Russian government officials have promised to take retaliatory measures. And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. Guido Crosetto, the Italian Minister of Defense, advocated bringing Ukraine and Russia to the negotiating table mediated by China, while Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has said that he was not seeking to please anyone, but was trying to find a third alternative that he believed would bring peace to Ukraine. In response, Oleksiy Danilov, Secretary of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, has urged politicians to avoid pro-Russian peacekeeping and give Ukraine more weapons. Spanish Defense Minister Margarita Robles confirmed that 6 Leopard 2 tanks pledged to Ukraine are already on their way to the country. The former commander of the Kosovo force and retired German General Erhard Bühler said that Ukraine requires not only air defense equipment, but also Western fighter jets. And now for the intelligence report segment, starting with the UK Ministry of Defense. The Russian MOD has launched a major new drive for volunteer recruits. A pervasive campaign has seen advertising appear on Russian social media sites, on billboards, and on TV. The new adverts appeal to potential recruits' masculine pride, appealing for real men, as well as highlighting the financial benefits of joining up. Since its access to prisoner recruitment was stopped, the Wagner Group private military company is also competing for the limited pool of Russian fighting-age men. It remains highly unlikely that the campaign will attract the MOD's reported target of 400,000 volunteers. The authorities are almost certainly seeking to delay any new overt mandatory mobilization for as long as possible to minimize domestic dissent. A look at the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. Regarding some information in this assessment, Natalia Humenyuk, head of the press center of the Operational Command Piefden, did not confirm or deny the information provided by the Institute regarding the armed forces of Ukraine units landing on the left bank of the Dnipro River in Kherson Oblast. Meanwhile, the Kremlin-installed acting governor of Kherson Oblast, Vladimir Zaldo, claimed there are no Ukrainian bridgeheads on the left side of the Dnipro. Russian mill bloggers have provided enough geolocated footage and textual reports to confirm that Ukrainian forces have established positions in East, left bank Kherson Oblast as of April 22nd, though not at what scale or with what intentions. Wagner Group financier Yevgeny Prigozhin is likely attempting to persuade Russian President Vladimir Putin to go over to the defensive ahead of a potential Ukrainian counteroffensive. Prigozhin is also advocating for Russia to focus on holding the current front lines rather than seeking more gains so that Russian forces can regain their combat effectiveness for later offensive operations. The Russian military command is likely attempting to convince Putin to turn to defensive operations as well, but may be unable to bluntly deliver this message to Putin. The Russian military command may have partially repaired its strained relationship with Prigozhin to persuade Putin to hold offensive operations via the Russian information space. Putin's continued insistence on Russian offensive operations in eastern Ukraine suggests that the group that wants to freeze the war along the current front lines has not fully persuaded Putin. Putin may be hesitant to commit to ceasefire due to the influence of select unknown pro-war figures or out of concern for the implications for his regime's stability. Russian occupation authorities are continuing to oppress Roman Catholics in occupied Ukraine, likely in an effort to suppress Ukrainian religious institutions beyond Moscow's control. Russian authorities continue to arrest personnel associated with the Russian Defense Industrial Base, DIB, likely to justify crackdowns and further conceal DIB activities. A Russian fighter bomber accidentally bombed Belgorod on April 21st with 2 FAB-500 bombs, one of which likely malfunctioned. And to wrap up the report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine. The enemy is concentrating its main efforts on conducting offensive operations in the Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka directions. Over 45 enemy attacks were repelled by units of the Defense Forces of Ukraine during the day on the specified areas of the front. The fiercest battles continue for Bakhmut and Marinka. In the Bakhmut direction, the enemy continues to conduct offensive actions. Heavy fighting continues for the city of Bakhmut. Also during the day, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions on the outskirts of Kryhorivka and Bodanivka settlements. In the Avdiivka direction, the enemy carried out offensive actions in the areas of Novokalinove and Permovaiske of the Donetsk Oblast without success and suffered heavy losses. In the Marinka direction, during the day, our defenders repelled numerous enemy attacks in the northern and central parts of the Marinka settlement, as well as in the Novomikhailivka area of the Donetsk region. Having no significant achievements on the battlefield, servicemen of the Soviet Union and representatives of the Wagner PMC are increasingly trying to find those responsible for this. Responsibility for own tactical miscalculations and losses is transferred to each other. As a result, recently in the settlement of Stanitsia Luhanska, Luhansk Oblast, a fight took place between servicemen of the Soviet Union and mercenaries of the Wagner PMC, which turned into a shootout. As a result of the conflict, there are casualties on both sides. Russian occupation forces continue to suffer heavy losses on the battlefield. All medical facilities in the temporarily occupied territory are full of wounded occupiers. As a result, the enemy is forced to use the educational institutions of the temporarily occupied territories for their own purposes. Thus, in the village of Mistki in the Luhansk Oblast, the invaders converted a local school into a military hospital. There are a large number of wounded Russians. In addition, there is a large shortage of medicines and dressing materials in all medical facilities of the occupiers. And that wraps up the report. Should you be interested in any article and want to read up on them, you can find links to them in the description as usual. If you enjoyed the report and found it informative, please consider sharing it with others and giving me a like. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You are listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.